Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session in our webinar series, A Day in the Life of. Today, we are very, very excited to have a mechanical engineer on board. His name is Edmund Haddad. Ed, we just need your camera on, please, if you don't mind.
It is on.
It's not on yet.
There's a signal issue. 2 seconds.
That's not a problem at all. So, okay, cool. I think the issue might be on my side. So, Ed, welcome. It is very nice to have you on board. Thank you for taking some time out of your Monday afternoon. We know it's after hours. It's such a pleasure to have you on board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and it's great to be here.
Okay, thank you. So let's get started. We have found in our experience that half an hour goes really, really quickly. Let's start at the beginning, Ed. So I've now said that you studied mechanical engineering. Maybe you can give us a little bit more information.
Yes, I studied mechanical engineering at University of Pretoria. I graduated in 2009, and then I decided to do my honors while I was still in study mode. So I chose the hardest subjects I could find, and then I graduated that in 2010. So I started working in 2011.
All right, and your honors, which university did you study at?
Also did it at Tux, and I can recommend honors. It really stretches you, so you don't really use that high-tech knowledge in your working life, but it's like climbing Mount Everest. It's like a big challenge, and you know you've done it. So it's added a lot of value in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, on top of the value that you get from doing any kind of a postgrad, it also looks great on paper, right?
Exactly. Yes, it does. Yeah. It just differentiates you from the rest. So absolutely, I can really recommend it to all the guys out there.
Yeah, and it's really important if you think about the employment situation, especially in South Africa, the importance of differentiating yourself as, you know, as a student, because you would have quite a few students coming out of any degree, engineering specifically, that's what we're talking about today. But if you just have that additional little thing sort of distinguishing you from the masses, it's really important. Do you think that it helps you, you know, find more job opportunities?
It definitely differentiates you, but the key thing I want to highlight is you have to have that learning mindset, that growth mindset. So you shouldn't just do an honors and stop. It's all about continuous learning because there's always new things coming out. So short courses, LinkedIn Learning, there's a lot of things available out there that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And all these little things I found really even differentiates you even more. Because if you just did an honors degree 10 years ago, it doesn't really, you're not staying up to date with the technology. So I can highlight, please carry on learning, never stop. And there's so much out there. It's a very interesting world we live in with lots of new things to learn.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to pick your brain with regard to short courses and continuous learning, but maybe we should start in the whole thing, you know, a day in the life of. So Ed, tell us, what is a day in the life of you like?
So at the moment, I'm working as a study manager and working at a junior mining company. So we do studies into mine expansion. So we found at my current company, we found lithium. So we had to do a study to find out if it's cost effective, if it's going to make the company money by beneficiating this lithium, mining it and beneficiating it. So we got a big company on board, engineering house, and I worked as the liaison on the client side, the study manager. It's like project management, but more creative, and then manage this whole process. So that's just some background. We'll talk about more on that later. But so in this role, it involves a lot of chatting to all the role players. So my day starts out with get to work, chat to everybody, and then checking your emails. So you've got your emails on your phone, but it's very important to stay on top of them. And then, as I mentioned, you have to go walk around and find out what's happening. So it's not a lot of calculations, but a lot of people management and making sure everybody's on the same page. And then I will, at around 9 o'clock, I'll phone my counterpart on the contractor side, just chat, finding out what happens there. And then usually we'll have once a week, we'll have a team meeting for about 2 hours with the whole team. And that is also important. So it involves a lot of meetings. and then after lunch we'll just sit down and do some real work. So in between the meetings, you can get to write some reports and get to cost management, those type of items. So it mostly starts with emails, then a team meeting, and then some calls between the consultants, and then afternoon you do your work. But the key thing is you need to structure your day when you are strongest. So I found I'm a morning person, so I'm the sharpest in the morning. Afternoon, I'm very not the most efficient. So that's why I try to do the brain dead work in the afternoon. But it depends person to person. Then you can structure your day that way.
Of course, that's so important. Hey, you need to listen to yourself and figure out what works for you. I too am more of a morning person. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll probably just say yes to everything, just to keep the day going. Ed, I'm curious about something that you said now. You spoke about people management, and you've also mentioned you working in the mining industry. When you say people management, what are you referring to? Like going on site, down to the mines? Maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
So mine, I don't go to site very often because the company I work for, they've got a mine in Africa. So it's quite of a schlep to get there. So mostly the people management I do is the contractors. We have a small owners team. So, and then the bulk of the work we outsource. So it involves a lot of cost management because you need to contract all these guys, and then you need to make sure that they're doing their work. But what I found is I'm very big on relationship building. So that's my thing. I don't manage people by the contract because I find if you need to start doing that, you've already sort of lost the plot a bit. So that involves constant chatting with these oaks to find out what they're doing, and if you see they're not on the right track, you can pull them gently on board to the right track. Because if you leave things, you don't talk to them for a week or two, and then you realize, oh, we've lost 2 weeks, and they've gone the total wrong direction, then everybody is angry. So that's why constant checking, constant feedback, what the guys are doing, but not micromanagement. It's just like chatting to them, finding out, and if they've got questions, you help them. So yeah, herding all these cats. It's mostly herding cats, getting everybody over the line. I mean, if there's some emotions, you manage it. If there's some confusion, you manage it. So it's like engineering, but engineering people, and that is very exciting.
I love that expression. You're engineering people. That's very, very cool. So you're talking about relationship building here. When people think about engineers, they always think about it from a very technical perspective. But you talk about relationship building. Let's then get into a little bit of the soft skills. So as an engineer, what do you think are the most important soft skills that you require in order to be a good engineer?
So I found communication. Communication is key. You can be the smartest person. If you cannot communicate that idea simply, then nobody's ever going to it's never going to get implemented, or nobody's going to understand what you're saying. So I read a book just when I started working, because I too was very technical and we too smart for my own shoes. And then I read this book, How to Make Friends and Influence People, from Dale Carnegie. And that is a very simply written book, but the ideas come across it's key ideas that come across. And I started implementing it a few years ago, and you cannot believe how your career just grows the moment you start building friends and influencing people. So that's probably the best book ever. So I can recommend that to anybody. So the moment you can communicate with people, it just makes life simpler. They want to talk to you. And you can also, there's another thing also, is just to be observant of people's body language. So you can quickly see if you've lost the other guy's interest. So they'll start playing on their phone, or they'll scratch their ear, or they'll start looking around. Then you need to wrap this up, or you need to explain the idea differently. Because if you just carry on talking technically, then you just lost them. So there's not really a book on that, but it's the body language, just reading people, being sensitive to what you see from other people, because there's a lot of different things being communicated non-verbally.
Oh yeah, it's the art of listening, I believe some people call it. Hey,
exactly. Yeah,
and I mean this influences both things. This influences your team as well as the deliverables expected from your client. Do you have deadlines that you have to work with quite often with your clients and clientele?
Yes. So this study, it's quite a. If I can talk a bit more about the role, then it
Please.
will answer this question. So we were asked to do this study into beneficiating lithium because the company wanted to use it to present it to the investors because it's a listed company, and then that will show the investors that look, we're doing something, and then the share price grows. So there's quite a lot of pressure on doing it, but there's also a lot of pressure of doing it right. So if you do it wrong and the answer is not something that the investors want to see, then it can have the adverse effect of negatively influencing your share price. So we were walking on this tightrope of having a good quality report with sort of the right answers highlighted, but also within, because we can take 2 years and then nobody's going to read it ever. So there's that fine line of getting it right, but also not rushing it. But yeah, so we did quite well. We were a month and a half late on this one, so it was still possible to sell it. We were supposed to be finished in November, and we finished mid-Jan. So the December holiday sort of saved our behinds a bit. But yeah, so that is a bit stressful. But the nice thing of the field that I'm in, the studies field, it's not so deadline and cost driven. It's more creative and outcomes driven. So we also have a project management team, and they are all, it's like a train on tracks. There's a deadline, there's costs, and that's all they do. There's no room for being creative, and that doesn't really speak to me. I like being the creative guy, thinking of different options, and that's why I really enjoy the study manager role, because there's still some leeway to play around.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because there's actually a question from an audience member who asks, is project management a big part of your job? And from what I'm hearing from you, it's actually a very distinct, different job from what you do. Okay. So communication in this sense is also very important, because you've got to talk to the project managers.
Yes. So so we've got quite a lot of to and fro between them, because we sort of set up the project, the business development team, and then once we get it approved, then it goes to the project managers to execute. So they need to then take this project that was scoped for $1 billion and whatever, and then they have to build it. So if we don't do a good job, then they are going to go over budget, and then there's always fighting. So, but the other thing also is, if the project is too realistic, then it's never going to get approved. So you have to be a bit creative with that cost to get the project approved, and then sell it later. Get the guy half pregnant, and then once he's half pregnant, they sort of end. So there's lots of gray areas, but it's an interesting field.
Yeah. So Ed, you used dollars for a second, and earlier on in the interview, you spoke about the mine in Africa. So and our audience members always want to know this. Is there a lot of travel opportunity with the work that you do?
Definitely.
Have you been anywhere interesting?
Yes, our mine is in Namibia. So Namibia is a great place, and a lot of overseas investors prefer Namibia because it's so stable, and there's not a lot of people, and there's lots of new projects coming online. So there's lots of hydrogen projects. They found some oil. So Namibia is really booming. And what they've now done is they've sort of made their visa requirements quite strict. So you can only go once on a visitor visa, and then you need a working visa. And that's why a lot of our guys haven't been able to go for a while, because it takes quite a mission to get that. But once you've got it, you can go easily. But it's very pleasant, and it opens your eyes. I can really recommend to all the young guys, go for jobs where you have to travel, especially when you're still in the beginning of your career, because you need to see what the guys are doing. So it doesn't help sitting in the office, because you don't know what you're talking about. So go there, go swing a spanner, go kick some rocks, and it's maybe not as glorious as you think it is, but for a short while, it adds a lot of value later on in your career.
Yeah. It's experience at the end of the day, and then you learn from different areas. If you stick in one thing too long, then you don't get as much experience as you would if you were actually doing this in as many places as possible. So Ed, there's a lot of questions on the chat with regard to two particular areas. One we've already touched on, so we can start at this point with regard to upskilling, which you did mention you wanted to talk to. And then thereafter, there's quite a few chats with regard to the interview processes for students and graduates coming out of university going into your industry. So if we could start first with upskilling yourself. So you get your degree, you get your honors, but you did talk about the importance of actually continuous learning. Maybe you could get into that a little bit more.
So just some background. I started my career in the manufacturing industry. So I started for 2 years. I worked as a mechanical engineer, and then I got an opportunity to work in a foundry. So I was a foundry engineer. I did simulation. There's only 3 people in the country that did this type of work, so I was very specialized. But then I did some cool stuff there. I went to Sweden quite often and really built the company up. But then after a while, I wanted to experience some different things, and then I decided to move to mining. So a few years ago, I had to completely start fresh as a young guy, as an old guy in a young man's role, learning mining. So that was quite a challenge, but I was able to do it. And the key thing is you need to be open to learn. Just listen, and there's a lot of guys that are keen. They want you to succeed. So if you just listen and you put aside your ego, because you think you're now this big guy, but you're not. So there's a lot of people that's older and more experienced than you. And if you listen to them, they will take the time to teach you. So that's one thing that I can really highlight to the young guys is when you come into a job, I was the same. When you come out of university, you think you know everything, but you don't. Just be quiet and listen and do every job. So I just put up my hand for everything. So just whatever the guy wants, say yes, I'll do it for you, and put in the extra hours, the extra time. And before you know it, that extra little work you do, even if it seems silly, like building a PowerPoint presentation, the next thing you know, you're going to get pulled into the presentation with the CEO, and you're going to get FaceTime with the CEO because you built that presentation. So you never know about the effects a small little job like building a PowerPoint presentation is going to have down the line. So the key thing is just do whatever the guys ask you to and be open to learn.
Be available, communicate, listen, and be friendly, be open to new experiences. I mean, we learn mostly from mentors after getting our degrees. Then you need a person in your life who's actually going to tell you, this is what's going on over here. What I am hearing from you is, okay, cool, you get the degree, that's fantastic. Honors, definitely favorable. The sort of soft skills or continuous learning that you mentioned seem to be, obviously the soft skills, communication, all of that, we've spoken about it. There's a business element, there's some management, all of that. Am I right in thinking about this way?
Yes. So what I found was when I got introduced in this role, there's a bunch of things that I didn't have any experience on, especially investment evaluation and a lot of project management types items. So instead of reading books and books on this, I just went and researched the key items so that you can hold a conversation. So you don't look like a guppy and just sit there, I don't know what I'm talking about. So go Google IRR, go Google NPV, go Google the key terms. And the moment you find it, you read a bit more, and that just, you scratch the surface. And before you know it, you know what you're talking about. And then you learn in the meetings. And what I also did was I like to reach out to counterparts that do not do the same thing I do. So I've got a lot of friends who are CAs. I've got one colleague at work, he's a geologist, other guy's an accountant. So I chat to them and I discuss these items with them, and they are experts. So you've got a lot of experts right at your fingertips. You just need to talk to them. And these guys are usually keen because you can teach them something that they don't know. So that's what I did. I went to ask the accountant, look, tell me a bit more about NPV and what is the company's hurdle rate? And the moment you start knowing a few key buzzwords, they start talking, and then you get into it. So there's a lot of on-the-job learning. But if you find something interesting that you really enjoy, LinkedIn Learning is a great thing. So what I do is I read a lot of news, and I like to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening. And then what I'll do is I'll go check on LinkedIn Learning what courses are available. And then it's usually a short 2-hour course, and they just give you an overview of, say, what's the word? AI. If you've got AI, or there's a lot of cool things that you just want to know about. So my view on the world is I like to keep my ignorance column as small as possible. So I don't need to be an expert on brain surgery, but I know there's a brain surgeon, and if I need brain surgery, I go to him. So so that's why I try to read as wide as possible, and it just sort of enriches your life.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a question relating to sort of studying and skills and so forth. An audience member would like to know: is it worth it to pursue a master's degree, in your opinion?
I think if you can do the master's through your work, I think that's the best. So there's honors you want to do while you're still studying, because it's usually coursework. But a master's is something, in my opinion, is something you want to do through your work. So you want to do it on a project, say at my company, on lithium beneficiation or flotation, because then it adds a lot of value to the company. But if you have a master's in lithium flotation and you want to go work somewhere else, then it looks nice, but then you've sort of done the work. I don't know, it doesn't really matter that much. So yeah, my view is, and it also adds value to have some work experience. So you don't want to be super academically educated, but with zero practical skills. And you get a lot of those oaks. And then there's a big disconnect, because technology and whatever you design needs to be implementable. And you only find out what is implementable by working and finding out what it makes sense. Because you can design the coolest thing, if it's too expensive or not really realistic, then it's never going to happen. So
that is so true.
A bit later after you've done some work. It's the same with the MBA. If you want to do an MBA, also do some work first. Just understand what's going on in the world, and then you do it.
Of course. No, it makes perfect sense. So you talk about work experience. A big question we get from all of our engineering students has to do with compulsory vacation work. Maybe we've not got a lot of time, Ed. We've got about 8 minutes, but maybe we can spend a couple of minutes talking about vacation work for engineers.
Yes. So what I did was, it's a few years back, but my father always said you need to go work with your hands, go find out what happens on the floor. So I actively went to manufacturing companies, try to find out if there's, and they always have holiday work, because they can get engineer level skills and at a fraction of the price. So they paid us like 100 Rand a day or something a few years ago. So it's a win-win for everybody. But then you've got something nice to write reports on. So you don't want to go sit in an office, because you ultimately have to write that report on practical experience. So if you overall a tube making machine or put in a new gearbox, there's something nice to talk about in your report, and then you've experienced it. Another thing that I found with doing practical work, like working in a plant or at a mine or somewhere where you do things on the floor, is one day when you're the engineer, that artisan is going to come and tell you, yes, it's done. And then you can say, no, it's not done, because you know what they're talking about. You can say, this bolt is not tightened properly. Where's the washer? Whatever. That's just a silly example. But then you can really see through the nonsense. And trust me, the guys are going to try and bullshit you. So it's very important to know what's happening on the floor. And then you can also just talk the lingo. So otherwise, they're just going to say, this guy, this is an engineer, he doesn't know anything. But if you can talk a bit of their language and like the way they say things, then you're already sort of in there, because I've experienced it.
Yeah, that's probably why it's part of the coursework. You need to get the practical experience, because there's just so much we can talk about theory. Just to jump from the practical experience sort of angle of this interview, I'm getting quite a few questions with regard to the odds of a first year signing a contract with a company and the whole interview process. So let's start there. In your experience, the interview process, is it more technical or what?
It depends what role you are applying for, but there'll be some technical questions. The guys will just check that you're not, you know what you're talking about, that you're not a pompoon. So so they'll ask a few questions, and then it's mostly about company fit. company fit, and if you've got drive. So you can get a really smart guy that just sits there. He's a clock watcher. He's not good, and that's what they look for in interviews. So you ask a guy a few questions, and you ask about extramural activities, just so you can get a gauge on what person. Because if the guy doesn't fit with your company, then because the company spends a lot of money training you, and they don't really get the value out of you for the first year or so. So if that guy leaves within 6 months, then it's a waste for the company. That's why there's a key drive on that company fit. Does he have drive? And then a few questions just on technical stuff. But most of your learning starts at the company. So the university gets you through the door. It shows that you can solve problems, you can think, you know how to approach something. But at the company, you learn what they teach you the way they want you to do things. So that's where the real learning starts.
So would you say, we've spoken a lot about listening attentively, communicating correctly with people. Would you say that these are the skills that students should actually, aside from focusing on their degree, but they should also pay attention to these to show that they are a good fit?
Yes, definitely. So if somebody talks, listen to what they say, don't interrupt them. And that's why that Make Friends and Influence People book. So, all know that old adage, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You have to listen twice and talk once. So rather listen first, make some notes. There's a key thing to make notes. And also, like, attentive listening. Remember what somebody says, because it shows a lot of that you really value what they're saying. So if the boss asks you something, make a note of it and do it. Don't go ask him 3 times, oh, what are you saying again? Because then they just get annoyed. You don't want your boss to get annoyed with you. And then you mentioned something now about first you're signing a contract with the company. So that doesn't really happen. But one thing that I've found adds a lot of value is holiday work. So if you find a company, find a big company and try to do your holiday work there every year. And then what happens is you become part of the furniture. So when they appoint somebody after they've got their degree, you're going to be first in line because they already know you. You know the way they do things. So in the short term, you're not making money out of them. So even if you do it for free, just go intern there, go fill with print with paper, whatever. And then one day when you've got your degree, you already know everybody.
Yeah. So Ed, let's talk about that a little bit. Where would my students go find this holiday work? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Google? Where are they looking for it aside from Gradlinc?
Yeah. So what I found was your network. Network is very important. So LinkedIn doesn't really advertise what I found holiday work. It's more about if you know somebody's dad works somewhere, go ask him, can I please come do holiday work here? And that's how things sort of grow. So there's the other point is your network is very important. So meet a lot of people, go to things, join groups, and then you start finding out, oh, this guy's father works there, and then you can get in there. So that's how I did everything. It's just like talking to people. If you know your neighbor works somewhere, go ask him, can I please come sweep the floors? Or you just put yourself out there, and then even if he doesn't have something, he knows a friend. He says, yeah, I've got this good neighbor. He seems very keen. He's studying engineering. Do you want to have him sweep your floors? Or that's just an example. But so that's the thing. It's just put your feelers out there. But there's no key point that I can say. It's mostly ask around, ask your friends, put on your network.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is all, at the end of the day, even if it's not the kind of work that you're expecting to do, it definitely is a situation of these are things that they can put on their CVs. And as always, Ed, unfortunately, this conversation's been great and I've run out of time. So we have less than a minute. So I need to actually take this moment to thank you very, very much for coming onto our webinar series. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. I love the honesty of everything that you've said from the perspective of an engineer. And I think our audience members have absolutely enjoyed it too. So thank you once again, and we hope that you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Bye, Ed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.